Good evening, everybody. We're going to start the session now. We've been waiting for a couple more people to join in, but we'll begin. Welcome to today's um workshop on lessons from the pandemic, part two. And we had a brief Q&A session with some of you participants, and we have some more people join in today. And rest assured that this session would also be posted on our social media pages later on for you to share with your friends and family. Today, we have shortlisted a topic that has come to us from a couple people, especially on our Facebook and Instagram pages. People have written to us. The most commonly experienced emotion in the current times, but one that is very difficult, or people are finding it very difficult to cope with, which is that of grief. And when we talk of grief, as such, it is a reaction to any form of a loss, right? That could include losing a job, losing a loved one, losing a previous lifestyle, losing something that was close to me. And more specifically, the loss of a loved one would be considered, or would be technically called, bereavement. But today we find ourselves as a community, as a society, as a country, globally, dealing with both of these intense emotions of grief as well as bereavement. And I want to, have this discussion floating. We have Dr. Rajiv Anand with us. All of you are familiar, senior psychiatrist and psychotherapist. And we also have Ms. Pooja Anand, who is a counselor in training with us. And today we're going to start this discussion first by understanding the emotion of grief, right? We may have heard of it, we may have all experienced it, but with the impact of the pandemic, what has been our observation of the emotion of grief? Pooja, I'd like for you to take this question up first. Many people have asked us about coping with grief, but I think before we move to that, let's first help our audiences understand what is grief. Could you explain that to everybody from a psychological perspective?
Good evening, Dr. Anand, and good evening, Rashi. Thank you for having me here today. And yes, I think grief is one of the most important thing that everyone is talking and going through in this difficult time that we are facing. So, grief is a very natural, strong, intense, emotional, overwhelming response to a loss, which is by itself very drastic and difficult to process for each and everyone. It is in universal and very normal to experience for everybody, for you, me, everybody out there. Like Rashi rightly said, it is grief is also a response to any kind of loss, which could be a job, a relationship, which is breakup or a divorce, or finances for that matter, or dreams that got shattered and fell apart, or in life general. So, and also most importantly, every person's way of dealing with grief is unique, complex, and personal, very personal. It differs from person to person. We cannot kind of categorize it to be it in a particular way. Every person goes through it and deals with it in its own way. uh, some of the ways in which we can overcome grief could be in the normal course of time, but yes, friends, families, and relatives could help facilitate the healing process. Some of the reactions for grief would include, number one would be feeling numb or empty, like you've been hit by a train or a truck, and the numbness you feel after meeting with an accident, like you feel no pain after it. Second would be any physical responses, like excessive crying or loss of appetite or changes in sleeping patterns and daily habits. Third would be anger, which includes a lot of suppressed feelings like pain, where we kind of keep suppressing it and we reach a point where we can no longer hold it back together and we need to vent it out, like frustration, anger. And so basically anger is masking our process, which comes out in this manner. fourth would be any guilt, which is I wish I could do that, or I wish I could have spent more time with that person. I wish I could have done this. All the what ifs come in this category. Fifth would be withdrawal from friends, families, daily activities, the activities that which we would do, but now we are no longer to do. We have no longer able to do. We don't have that interest and inclination towards it. Sixth would be focus difficulty in focusing or taking decisions, and lastly it would be questions about self-worth, value and purpose in life. So according to me, grief is it lasts as long as we uh, kind of adjust to the fact of the loss in our life. It could last for months, it could last for years, depending on each person. Again, it's a very personal thing on how you deal with it. It differs from person to person. There's no time frame to it. Rashi, I'd like to ask you if you could throw some light on how one can cope up with their loss, loss of a loved one, or anything that
Yeah.
we've floated about, and how can
Yeah,
people.
thank you. Yes, thanks, Pooja. Thank you for explaining that with so much detail, because I think that your response was very comprehensive in helping people be able to identify with the emotion of grief. From everything that you mentioned, some people may identify to a part of it, some may identify to another, but I think that it was very, very descriptive in that sense. And when you ask about loss of a loved one, yes, that is what most people are going through. Most people are finding it difficult. More specific, today we're talking about grief more specific to the COVID situation, because grief as it is an intense emotion. And I'm really, wanting to hear from Dr. Anand on this, because it is an intense emotion as it is, but in a COVID situation, it becomes very, the whole experience of it is very unique, right? Because we're not able to grieve in the same way as we would. Normally, we want to do that with our family. We want to meet our loved ones. We want to have that support system. We can't do that. We're not able to bid our goodbyes in the ways that we want to. We're not able to, bounce back to routine. It's not like life or work or, things are kind of getting us as busy as they would otherwise. So just so many things are different that people aren't understanding how to, kind of cope with it. Something that you mentioned about frustration, and I also want to kind of throw light here briefly. There are a couple stages of grief, right, which are commonly understood by people, which is the healing process from grief normally may begin, and please note that it could be really different for different people. It doesn't have to be the same for you, but it could range from being in a space of denial to feeling angry, like Pooja mentioned, that a sense of anger, that I am very upset with the world or the medical system or life in general or a particular circumstance. So from denial to anger to feeling a sense of helplessness or frustration, even moving forward to some forms of mild depression and intense sadness, to eventually acceptance. So in that entire range, you could start at any point, you could find yourself at any point, but yes, rightly said by you, it's a very unique process. My timeline to heal could be very different from that of another person. I may take a couple months, but that doesn't mean that 4 months down the line I am done healing, because the only thing that I want people to understand is that grieving is a continuous process that you may want to adapt to doing as part of your life journey, right? So I may go back to life, I may go back to routine, I may even go back to enjoying certain things or certain elements, but that does not mean that I have now moved on from the loss of my loved one. So a healthy way of sort of grieving and a healthy way to accept, coming to that stage of acceptance, is to understand that I am in continuous communication and in continuous sort of process of healing or process of interacting with the person that I have lost, more specifically for the loss of a loved one. And there's going to be no specific day or moment that will tell me that after this moment I am done now, because it's going to be a continuous journey. It may go on for a few years, it may go on for the whole of my life if it is somebody who is very significantly attached to me. So that is something that we are encouraging people to do, to please talk about it to your near and dear ones, to understand and accept that it may be a continuous journey, and you don't have to feel the pressure to be done grieving or feel the pressure to bounce back to life in a particular way. Dr. Anand, I'd really like to hear from you on, a lot of people are also asking, how should we support others, right? We know our friends and family are grieving. How can we support them? What can we do? What is the right thing to say? What is stuff that we should not say? So I think from a very personal perspective, because even colleagues, right? It may not be a family member, but so many people have written to us about having lost a significant colleague and they're not able to cope with that. So how would you recommend people, from your experience and your perspective on
Okay.
the healing process for themselves and others?
Okay. Very interesting discussion you have been having, and I'm really delighted to hear both of you. And very valid question you ask about it. Last 15 months, Corona, COVID, lockdown, pandemic, all of us are sick of hearing these words endlessly on TV, on newspaper, on WhatsApp messages, in personal encounter with the friends and the relatives and the social circle. Enough. Let's stop talking about Corona and COVID and lockdown and pandemic and problems of different kind. Our mind is too much overloaded and too much overfed with these words. Let's talk about what's good after this 15 months. What is good? What are the solutions? Please listen carefully. Mind is in the habit of getting attached to the problem. Mind is not in the habit of finding solution. A balanced mind, a cultured mind, what we are working for, providing to you the guideline. A balanced, cultured, regulated, disciplined mind is oriented to find solution. Right now, how to process that grief? You have choice. Either to continue grieving, sulking, feeling sorrow, feeling lonely, feeling depressed, and making others, everyone around you. Because when you get into these negative emotions, you create the negativity around you, which is infectious much more than any virus, which affects everyone else around, like passive infection, pass on to them, and they also get into the mood. Many of us might have lost their near dear ones, but why not we should accept that life per se means flow. Life is always in flux. If anybody has any lack of clarity about the word flux, river is always flowing. Water in the sea or the ocean is always moving, always flowing, never static. In fact, none of the part of your body, none of the cell in your body is forever. So we individually, or whatever way we want to look at it biologically, we are never static. We appear to be static. Problem begins when we get attached to the life, or when we get attached to the relationship, when we get attached to the things, and that's where we invite problems. That's where we invite grief. Every individual is in his or her own journey. Every individual, maybe sitting next to me or maybe somewhere away from me, has got his own course, has got his own life, has got his own destination. So am I. Many times we may appear to be moving together, but we have our own respective journey. So if you develop a very healthy attitude, these are the words which you need to focus on. If you develop a very healthy attitude of shifting from the problem to the solution, you have choice. Like imagine if this hand is emotion and this hand is action, and these both should complement each other to make me lift any heavy thing. If I drop one hand, then this thing I wouldn't be able to lift if it is so heavy. This hand support this hand support this hand. So you have a choice: either continue being emotional, minimize action, and suffer, and let negative emotion be overwhelming, unmanageable, unsurmountable, and you become victim of your negative emotion. You become patient, like what happened to the bereaved people, and they become patient of severe depression, and they think about leaving this world and going somewhere else because their father, mother, so on and so forth left this. Or you have a choice: action. Action is always energizing you. Action is always providing movement to you. Action is always providing direction to you to move on and move away from where you have been. Whosoever might have been close to us in the life, he or she is alive in our memory, and that's more than enough. The inspiration, the time spent, the time experienced together is more than enough. We should now move to the action part, what we can do in our life. We owe a lot to the society. We owe a lot to our family, to our near and dear ones, to the society in general, to the country in general, to the planet Earth in general. We owe a lot. We have to do a
I may
lot with permission.
interrupt. I'm sorry if I may interrupt because you said action. I want to ask you this question because you spoke so correctly about action supplementing emotion. But for a lot of people, especially in close situations, if they are not able to cope with the emotion, would taking help, reaching out for guidance on in terms of grief counseling or in terms of psychological emotional support also be considered as action, because I see that as first step action towards the self. Is that
Everybody,
also what you mean by action?
yes, yes. Each one of us have a need to talk. We have a
Mm,
need to talk out.
mm,
We have a need to talk to someone. We have a need to be heard. We have a need to be understood. We have a need to be supported. And that is also part of the action, positive action to help ourselves. If I would be having balance in my emotion, then only I would be able to support someone else. So my ability to support someone primarily depends on my maintaining my balance.
yeah.
So first we have to restore our own equilibrium, mental equilibrium, emotional
Mm,
equilibrium, beside
mm,
physical equilibrium. Then
mm,
only I would be able to help someone else in my family. Maybe if I'm
mm,
father, if I'm grandfather, if I'm brother,
mm,
then I have to
mm,
support others. So
mm,
action means helping oneself. Now here there's a need for slight correction because people think if I ask help, I would be considered weak. No,
mm,
we don't feel shy in calling electrician or plumber for any help. We don't feel shy in calling carpenter. We don't feel shy in taking help of anything which service industry where we are not good at.
mm,
Similarly, the action means everything we may not be good at understanding. What are we
mm,
going through? There are people who
mm,
would explain to you in a very simple way, and they are your friends. They are your really genuine, caring, understanding friend who can guide way out of the darkness where you are stuck. So action begin from your own self. And action begin, take charge of your life, take charge of emotion, take charge of the action, on,
mm.
move on and move away.
And move on necessarily because somebody is writing in the chat window. I'm picking this up because somebody has commented after listening to your comment. Move on doesn't mean that you have to feel guilty that have I
No,
moved on. Move on is that I could still be holding on to the essence of my equation or my relationship or my affection for the person who's no more,
yes,
but I'm moving on with life. Somebody's commented on that, doctor.
love is a very subtle emotion.
Hmm.
More it is held inside, more it nourishes you.
Hmm.
More it is brought out in the public, it
Hmm.
makes you feel weak. Love is a
Hmm.
very subtle emotion. So if you have lost someone, loved one near one, dear ones, anyone, why
Hmm.
celebrate your emotion with him or her? That's your strength. In your memory, it would always remain during your lifetime. Why to feel guilty about it? And why to
Hmm.
let this subtle emotion ruin your current life and your current function or your current duty?
Hmm.
So we have to take charge of our emotion, balance it, counterbalance it with appropriate action,
Hmm.
and then continue movement ahead.
And I'm going to uh, conclude the discussion on this specific topic with the last statement that you said, doctor, that your love, your emotion of love for the person is going to continue irrespective of their physical presence in your life, right? So I think that is something that I believe can give strength, because doctor just said that use that as your strength, using that as our strength to say that I know I can't see that person again, and I know that a lot didn't happen the way I would have liked for it to, but I'm still going to use that as the fuel to my energy, and I'm
Fuel
going to use
exactly.
that. Yes, use
Very well said.
use that to fuel myself and to carry on, not feeling guilty about the fact that
So
moving on means that I'm doing something wrong.
emotion is a great power if
Hmm.
channelized well.
Yes.
Has a great weakness if not understood well and not applied upon well.